1413, February 3rd, 2025. Right now marks 628 hours of progress on the Global Hover simulation. Currently, a major feature has been implemented, or two major features, transparency, as well as the loading of textures into a 2D texture array. After 30 hours of attempting to figure it out, the solution was found, or at least a optimal solution for not having to hard code the textures into the shader, and that is utilizing the texture 2D array type within the texture and a texture index to specify which texture is to be displayed with the vertices. So the most difficult part was connecting the vertices, or trying to conceptualize how to connect the vertices to the 2D array, and that's done using the texture index, which is set within the vertex type, which is just a custom struct which matches the input layout of the shader as described within the vertex shader's input. One thing to note about this shader is that it contains the vertex and the pixel shader within the same type, but to demonstrate the flexibility of it, changing the types as an example can simply change the image that is being displayed. So now they're all 0, and to get them back in order, so that manipulates that. And one thing to note here is that that value has to be a uint, since it's specified as a unsigned integer within the struct. Doing something like an integer for that would not work. It would cause an error. So loading that, that causes an error. So setting that back to uint, another thing that can possibly be discussed here is the transparency and how that was resolved. Currently it's being resolved using something called a blend state, and to demonstrate it, what it looks like without the blend state, using a different clear color, the normal gray one. If that isn't set, then there's some artifacts here, such as colors around the edges that shouldn't be there, which was something that was being noticed early on, as the basic triangle tutorials don't show how to set blend state. So now that that's been figured out, that's a good bonus, as it's working transparency for 2D. And besides that, how it actually works is within this load texture method is probably the most important bit. So it begins with a integer for num textures being specified, which right now at the moment that's hard coded, but if serialization was set up, then that could be loaded from some configuration file for a specific texture or something of the sort, in a case where data and logic were separated. And besides that, the texture, well, one thing to note is that there's only one texture 2D description necessary, as well as one SRV, so one shader resource view. They are passed off after all that data is filled in. They're passed off to the shader along with the sampler state, and it seems to be as simple as that. So now that this has been figured out, that is an example of index buffers, quads, as well as the textures being implemented and loaded onto the quads without having to hard code everything. So that could support more functionality such as sprites or animation. So the intention going forward is to set up the project finally to try and spawn them over time.